You are listening to the Billy Dees Podcast.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, I have an interview for you. On the studio line with me is Stacy Rogers. Stacy, so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me again.
Absolutely. Yes, she's been on the program before. Stacy Rogers is a candidate for the governor of Kansas. She is running as a Republican. And I'll say this, we don't too often... In this business, we talk to a lot of people that are pundits and they're advocates and they're this and that and the other thing. But we don't too often talk to people that are actually willing to strap on a helmet and go out in the field and, get hit. And you are doing that. What inspired you to run for governor? Because that's a big office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the short story is back in 23, I had just had it up to, here on, with the things that our governor was doing. And I just threw my hands up in the air in my living room one day and just said, I can't take any more of this. I'm going to have to go be governor. But when I started talking with people, what I realized is that everybody I talked to just felt disenfranchised. They didn't feel like their voice mattered. Nobody was listening to them. Nobody was working for them. They didn't like the options that were being presented to them. And so it was resulting in people not voting at all. And they just didn't have a better option available. So I said, you know what? I care. I will come out and speak with people. I will work for them. And I will give them another option. And so that is really what has driven this campaign for almost 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And we're getting very close, of course, to the primary.
So what's this? I'm from Ohio, so I'm not exactly sure of how your dates are spaced out. You have one more primary, is that correct?
Well, yeah, our primary is August 4th.
Okay.
And then we'll have our general in November. Okay. Mm-hmm.
From what I'm gathering, you are rising in the polls. As far as the Republicans go, I think you were ranked at number 2 last time I checked. Is that about? I mean, obviously everybody wants to be number 1, but are you satisfied with the progress you're making?
Oh, very much so. They try to suppress me a lot and keep me hidden, but that has not worked. And I think that's very telling of the temperature of our state. And we're really at a breaking point at this time that they're very done with what all the people they've had to choose from in the past, the people that have not been working for them. And they're just really searching for somebody that actually cares and wants to fix things in this state.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was checking out some of the information, related to your campaign, and Texas and a lot of folks are getting an influx of people running from California. Kansas is one of those people that's actually losing a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, our property taxes are out of control, for one thing. And again, when you are in an area that you do not feel like anyone's listening to you and working for you, after a while, you feel like you're yelling into a void and get tired. You get fed up and say, you know what, there's probably something better out there. And that's the exact opposite of what we want people to feel about Kansas. Kansas is a wonderful state. It's a beautiful state. And we have so many amazing people and towns and, quite frankly, hidden gems in our state that, even people who've lived in Kansas their entire life don't know is there. And I was one of them. I'm a multi-generational Kansan, and I didn't know that some of the things existed in Kansas. Mm-hmm. And I even like to go on day trips and visit places, and I had missed some things. So we have a great state, and we don't want people to leave. but that's how frustrated people are becoming.
Yeah. What's something about Kansas that you feel like in Ohio, for example, a lot of people know corn. That's the joke. If you get mad at somebody in Ohio, you say, "Oh, well, you haven't nothing there but corn." Okay. That's a little, we're actually like the 7th largest economy. Now, naturally, we're behind California, Texas, Florida, New York, and a few others. But we do have agriculture here. But we also have technology here, really big time. We have medicine here, really big time. And we have energy here. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. What are some of the things about Kansas? Like you said, you natives, people who live in Kansas don't even know about. What's something that you would like to just point out that people around the country may not know about Kansas?
Well, I think often what Kansas is considered is the flyover state. There's nothing here. It's totally flat. Nothing but wheat fields. And we are a very agricultural state, but we're also, the air capital of the world sits in Wichita, Kansas. And so we have aviation, and we have the Flint Hills, which is very interesting because there is a large portion of the state that is not flat. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't know that. We have some very interesting things in Kansas that are not just agriculture. So, yeah.
It is very pretty out there. There's absolutely no question. I've been through it. It's been a while, but I have been through it. Okay. Yeah. Some of the key points, and here in Ohio, these data centers are becoming a point of contention as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm on the fence about this. I'm just being honest with you. I haven't made up my mind yet. I know that there's a lot of resistance to the data centers. Mm-hmm. Let's start there. What are people's concerns about the data centers?
Well, let me ask you a question first.
Sure.
How many are being proposed in your state right now? Do you know that number?
I don't know the number, but I see the signs all over here. We don't want a data center in our neighborhood.
Yeah. So the issue is we've had data centers for a long time. They are in buildings. They run everything that we utilize. They're air cooled. They're server rooms. That's what they are. Yeah. And what these are is something completely different. They are behemoth facilities that take up hundreds of acres, millions of square feet in warehouses. And we have so many projects in this state right now. More than 20 are being proposed in Kansas alone. And they're heavy water users, heavy land users. And the biggest problem that I have with them is the lack of transparency and honesty with the amount of resources they're actually going to use. And we haven't dealt with this kind of project before. And so our planning and zoning regulations in a lot of the state are not prepared to deal with this kind of a facility. They don't even know the questions to ask. And these companies have really taken advantage of both of those points, and they're predatory. They have looked for the weak spots and decided, you know what, they don't know any better. And a lot of times it's very obvious they think that we're stupid and can get one past us and get these things pushed through. And that just simply is not the case. And we're seeing that across the state. There's lots of communities that are coming together and saying, you know what, we don't want this here. You guys have been behind closed doors, making deals, not sharing it. This is utilizing taxpayer dollar. You want to give them tax abatements. You want to give them, all this stuff. And how is it really going to benefit us? And what is going to happen in 5 years when the technology changes? Are they just going to up and leave? And now we're going to have these massive facilities that cannot be restored and that we have to clean up. There's just a lot of questions that are not being answered appropriately or adequately for anyone to get behind them at this point because of the blatant lack of transparency. Sure. Had these companies come in and started to have a conversation and been, truthful from the start, not worked behind the scenes with these cities and counties, that might have been different. And there could be a place in the state for energy projects not energy and these data center projects. But the way that they go about it is, I think, at the crux of why people do not want them.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, that is something that keeping it above board and being honest, I think, is really the key to a lot of these things. I know one of the key issues with these data centers is the enormous amount of electric power that they use.
The water is a bigger deal for us here in Kansas.
A bigger deal. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I know, because around here they're concerned about the stress on the public electricity, and of course in Washington there has been some proposals that some of these big companies got to find a way to generate their own power.
And that actually hurts even more.
Okay.
That actually benefits the company to produce their own power. And you want larger users on the grid to lower the price for everybody.
Okay.
However, the infrastructure costs jack everybody's prices up. And so when we're looking at that factor, yes, there is definitely going to be stress on the infrastructure, and we're also not prepared for that. But when you flip over to the water issue, we've had water issues for a very long time in Kansas. And when the companies say our baseline average water use is this, that's only part of the story, because it doesn't talk about what their peak is.
Okay.
So baseline average of when they're not doing a whole lot of anything, when the temperature's not 100 degrees, when it's, it is one thing, but they're not sharing the numbers of what happens when they have those peaks.
Okay.
And then what comes along with these data centers is the need for backup generators. So that's where all of these solar projects and battery storage facilities and wind farms come from. They want to tap into those for their backup. Then there's the noise issue, the generators that run that creates a large amount of noise pollution.
Sure.
And there can be detrimental effects from that, the tonal effects that cause anxiety and disruption of sleep. Then there's the lights that come with it for the security. And of course, that can mess up your circadian rhythm when you're trying to sleep. So there's just a lot more negatives to these projects than there are positives. And those are the things that we have to address. And, there's been some other concerns about why we need so many of them in the U.S., period, and what they're doing with them. What has been the change? And a lot of it has to do with AI. What has been the change that they need so many of them and so quickly? And then we look at, so we're talking about AI. We're talking about, we have a lot of flock cameras in our state, and a lot of people are concerned about the data that's being collected with that and where that's being stored, who owns it, who controls it, how is it being sold. People are getting very uncomfortable with that. And then, there was talk of the digital currency. Is this part of that as well? And so there's just, there's multiple levels of concern that I think make a lot of people very uneasy about the underlying intention of what is happening, that they're not really having a part in that conversation.
Sure.
They're finding out at, the ninth hour of, we're going to do this, and you might be able to do something about it, but we really don't care because we've really already done the deal.
Yeah.
But the even more troubling thing is that we're finding out that these companies, these private companies, are threatening. I know of 2 cases right now where they have threatened the city or county or planning and zoning with lawsuits because their current planning and zoning regs don't disallow them to be in the area. And so they're saying, if you don't let us in, we are going to sue you. And so you are forcing cities and counties into a corner where they cannot do the will of the people. And there should never be a time when private companies have control over the cities and counties against the will of the people.
Yeah. I believe I'm totally with you there. I think most people are. With these, AI is certainly a big part of this. I'm a computer guy, and I've noticed, like, for example, memory is through the roof right now. The chips are of a shortage. Apple just raised its prices. So the technology is growing faster than, the economy and the laws and everything can adapt.
That's correct.
What is your answer to a lot of people who are saying if we don't build these data centers somewhere, and maybe if we advocate for, the federal government to take some of this over, that we could fall behind what the Chinese are doing, and that could be a disaster with AI.
We have over 4,000 currently in this country, far more than any other country out there. So enough. I think that's a bit of a false statement. And, we're not falling behind. We've got more than anybody else by a massive amount.
Okay.
And, I don't really want the federal government coming in and saying that we have to build these things.
I don't mean there, but I just meant to take the stress off of the states, because it seems like it's an issue in every state.
Well, and unfortunately, in our state, it's been left to local control, which is fine. I totally believe in local control, except for when we're dealing with predatory companies that are trying to take advantage. And so then, we need to have some guardrails at the state level to protect these cities and counties from these predatory companies so that we can make sure that the deals that they're getting are good, that they are going in the right places in the state where they're not going to be harmful. Because the reality of it is we are not going to stop them all. It's coming, but we are not currently prepared for it, and we're not protecting our citizens or our resources.
Yes. Interesting stuff. You mentioned, you touched on property taxes. There's a growing movement, not just in your state. I hear it here in this state as well. I don't think it's going to be an issue this year in our races in regard to getting rid of property taxes. But the suggestion has been made at various levels of government across the country that if you own your house, and especially if you pay it off, why should you have to pay on something that you own? Is that a fair statement?
There's, I would say that is prior to the data center issue, was the top issue in the state of Kansas. And, our property taxes are just astronomical in comparison to what they were just even a few years ago. And so, but there's a few things that are leading into that. So first of all, we do have a declining population. We have a declining birth rate. And that's not just in Kansas that we have a declining birth rate. That's across the country. And, so we have a funnel system. More and more of the burden every year is placed on fewer and fewer people. And so it is a collapsing system. It is not sustainable. And we do have to look for another way to fund those local budgets. And so, and part of the reason I definitely want to get into this, because our state blames our counties and tells them it's their fault, while at the same time telling them that they need to raise their valuations because they're not at the right level. So they're putting pressure on the counties to raise valuations and then blaming them for property taxes going up. In addition, they removed revenue sources from the cities and counties that resulted in them owing the cities and counties billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And that would have made a dramatic difference in property tax. If they restarted that one program, it would drop, just to use one county as an example, Leavenworth County, where my lieutenant is from, by 8 mills. And that would have a similar impact across the state. So it would offer quite a bit of relief. But they do not and cannot restart it because they've absorbed that money into the state budget. So that, coupled with star bonds, which I don't know, do you have star bonds where you're at?
I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what those are.
Star bonds are sales tax and revenue bonds, and they're supposed to be for economic development. Now, most people will know what a star bond is when I say the Chiefs deal. So our Chiefs deal in Kansas, worst deal in sports history. I have nothing against the Chiefs. But that deal, we gave away absolutely everything in a supposed economic development deal. And it's so bad. We don't even know all the details of it yet. But what we do know is terrible enough.
Okay.
And so STAR bonds they're supposed to bring in out-of-state sales tax revenue in the form of tourism. So I don't know if you've noticed, Kansas is not a huge tourism state.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So what historically has happened is instead of it creating new sales tax revenue from out of state, it has simply shifted sales tax revenue. So you're shifting that into the pockets of investors who invested in these STAR bond projects out of our local and state budgets. So that has also caused a problem. And we have 17 of them active in the state right now, with 3 more on the way. And it's somewhere between 65 and 75% of our entire state's population now lives within 5 miles of a STAR bond area. So some of the rhetoric that's out there is that, well, if it's not in your county or you don't live near one, you're not affected by it. But the reality is the majority of the state is.
Yeah.
And so that is money that is not going into, it's their tax dollars, not going into our local and state budgets. They're going into investors' pockets. So they had an opportunity to sunset those in this last legislative session. They quietly renewed them right at the end of the session. And even if they had, it would still take us decades to dig out of STAR bonds in this state. And so that is also one of the reasons why we have higher property tax, because of the local governments giving some of the sales tax revenue that they would have otherwise been able to utilize to these investors to pay these STAR bonds back. So, and when they fail, it's a big problem. And they really just need to go away. They're not a good economic development tool. Maybe 1 or 2 in the state might have been okay, but where we're at right now, they're completely overused. I'm happy to talk about the Chiefs deal, the Kansas City Chiefs deal a little bit, because if anyone has been following it, I know nationally it was called the worst deal in sports history, and I would agree with them.
Well, I could offer up the Deshaun Watson trade in Cleveland. That one was pretty bad too.
Well, let me tell you how this went down in Kansas. Okay. So we have something called the LCC, which is the legislative committee that can operate outside of the legislative session, and it's made up of our majority and minority leaders in the House and Senate. So this deal was done by them outside of this regular session with our governor. It was a gross abuse of power, because the job of the LCC is to research in between legislative sessions and bring back information to the legislative session. It is to keep a rogue governor in check, and it is to make emergency budgetary decisions outside of the legislative session. None of those applied to this deal, number one, except for they created an imaginary emergency deadline of December 31st, conveniently outside of the legislative session, which, then I guess fit their criteria. So they made this deal, and we get $0 in revenue from anything held at the stadium. So if you hold a birthday party at the stadium, the revenue goes to the Chiefs. We own the stadium as a state. We receive, of course, no property tax because of that. It's a state-owned facility. And then the Chiefs are paying $7 million a year in rent into a Chiefs-controlled fund that they can use for maintenance and security. So we have zero money coming in on this now. And I want to compare it to Arrowhead Stadium. So 15 years ago, we had a renovation on Arrowhead to the tune of $400 million. Okay. The current renovation estimate on Arrowhead is $800 million. Now, we're not putting anything away. We're not, even if we got the $7 million a year and it wasn't allowed to be touched, that's not even enough to take care of the renovation that was done on Arrowhead just 15 years ago. So it will be in the billions when we come around 10, 20, 30 years from now. as to renovation costs, and that will fall directly on the taxpayer. So one of the other arguments is, well, we'll get the income tax from the players. And that, as a business owner, makes me laugh probably harder than anything, because clearly the people saying that are not business owners. They do not understand that those guys breathe and write it off. And the attorneys they hire, they write those off too. And those attorneys are tasked with finding more things for them to write off. They are incorporated. That we are not going to see a significant amount of income tax in the state of Kansas from these players. Yes. So the whole deal all the way around. Oh, we did get one thing. We got a box. Not for you and me, but for the legislators.
Oh, of course.
Of course. That was what we got out of it.
Well, we certainly don't want them to catch a chill or anything like that during football weather. So, oh my goodness. Yes, the property tax issue, for a lot of people, especially when you reach retirement age, you no longer have an income, someone could lose their house even though they've already paid it off.
That's correct.
So, I think that's something that a lot of people are really paying attention to. I'll spare you the details of the Deshaun Watson trade. Maybe it's not as bad as what you're describing, but it was pretty bad. Okay, enough of that. I'm trying to interject a little humor there. But anyway, probably on everybody's list, no matter what state you're in, is education. And I'm one of those people. I don't understand what's happening to the money, because it doesn't seem like teachers make a lot of money. It doesn't seem like, a lot of the people who actually do hard work in those schools, right down to the janitor, don't make a whole lot of money. But when you look at the budgets, even across the board, all across the country, it seems like there's a ton of money going into these schools. What is it? Just mismanaged? What's happening to it? What does it need?
So we have 20 mils of property tax that goes towards education at the state level, and so that's actually part of what needs to be looked at to offer relief for property tax. But and just circling back to property tax real quick, there are several plans that I'm looking at. I think it's going to take a multi-faceted approach to offer real relief, but it solves a multitude of issues when we can get rid of property tax. And that means that people won't be intentionally trashing their property in the hopes their property tax doesn't go up. They won't feel penalized for taking care of their property. They will not. They'll actually own their property. And shifting just a portion of the population away from property tax is not the answer, because again, we're just shifting that to fewer and fewer people. We've really got to address the issue of why it's so out of control and what's another way we can fund it. So there are several plans I'm looking at. Some are long-term, some are short-term. I'm looking at all those to make sure that they would align with what will actually offer relief for the people of this state. And of course, the legislature has to come up with those. And as governor, I would be signing off on those. So that is what I'm looking at. I have to work with the legislature to come up with those plans. Going on to education. So in Kansas, over 60% of our entire state budget goes to education. And the people of our state every single taxpayer should be absolutely livid at our education system right now, because we have illiterate graduates. We have 70% in remedial reading and math. We do not have good outcomes, and we are not creating adults ready for adulthood. So we have a lot of challenges to overcome just in the education piece, such as we need to get back to basics, pen to paper. It is scientifically proven that when you put pen to paper, your brain forms synapses that concrete that information in a completely different way. And so that needs to happen. We need to get them out from in front of computer screens all day long. They need the technology, absolutely, but not all day long, all their homework, everything they do, because it's not, you don't retain the information the same way. We need to get back to skills, actual skills learning. And we've lost a lot of that in this state. Quite frankly, we've lost the purpose of education in the state, which is to create ready adults and proficient adults. So when we're talking about our state budget, the education budget being 60% of it, 40% of that sits in administration. So that is the problem. We have superintendents and some even lower than that make more than the governor, and some make triple and quadruple what the governor does in this state. And we have a lot of superintendents. We have a lot of school districts. And so one of the ideas is to consolidate superintendents over multiple school districts. That would save millions and millions and millions of dollars a year that we could put towards teacher retention and to student learning. Because you're right, teachers are not paid well enough in this state. We have a hard time keeping good teachers. And we need to, no teacher should be funding their own classroom. That happens all the time here. And we not enough money is reaching those kids. So that's something that really needs to be looked at as to why we're spending so much in administration. And it's just an outrageous number. Yeah. So, and then another thought of mine is to move towards proficiency and progress-based funding. Now, I think we talked about this the last time I was on the show. I have 2 kids that are they have special learning challenges. They're all adults now. They're all grown and graduated, but they needed extra things. So when we're talking about progress-based funding, I'm speaking specifically about special education and or the transfer students that come in and they're at a deficiency when they arrive. And so that isn't fair to penalize that school that hasn't had them the whole time for the fact that they're not progressing. So when we're talking about even if we have a special education student or a transfer student at a deficiency, if we are basing it off their progress, which children can progress, they may not all reach proficiency, then that's something we need to look at. Our goal is proficiency, and the majority of those students can reach proficiency if we start in the right area, the right time, the right age, and make sure that they're reading by the time they leave 3rd grade at that grade level so that they have a base to build on. And that has not been happening in this state. So, yeah.
What you mentioned about writing, in terms of cognitive development, I very sincerely believe that, because I've interviewed a lot of authors, and they all agree that there's a certain magic that happens when you're writing a story and you're writing it down, as opposed to dictating it. It doesn't come out the same. There's something about as your words are being formed, watching the words being formed and knowing where your next thought is going to go. There's a certain rhythm to that process that I think young people are really missing out on. I think I can't, that's an excellent point. And you're one of the few people that I've heard mention it in terms of education now, because cursive is right outside the window now, thrown right outside the window. A lot of young folks can't even read it.
No, a lot of them can't. And that's, as an employer who has hired products of our public school system, the gaps in the things they should have learned in high school that I'm now as an employer having to teach them is just astounding. Yeah. And one of the other struggles is now our community colleges are filling the gap in those, in what those kids did not learn in high school that they should have, and having to create programs to teach them. And so that's just putting more strain on the system as a whole, where if your K-12 education is not performing where it should be, and now you have to go do it at the community college level or the college level, 4-year college, then we're just wasting. It's wasteful. Taxpayer money at that point. We waste far too much and not do the right things with it.
Yeah. There's so much going on that's impacting the young people now, and we could get back to AI because I know teachers now are having a problem with homework being written by ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other component, and I don't know what government can do about this, state or otherwise, I hear from so many people that the parents just aren't as invested as they used to be in their kids.
I don't know that that they're not invested. And here's the thing, when you start to look at all the problems of a state and you say, okay, well, let's start fixing this over here. And then you realize, wait, it's connected to this over here. And yes, that's connected to this over here. So when you have families that are struggling to put food on their table, that their property taxes are going up, I was in Sharon Springs, which is on the far northwest corner of the state. And a woman came up to me and she said, my property tax payment every month is more than my house payment. Mm-hmm. Families can't survive like that. And so if they are having to take 2 or 3 jobs or make choices that otherwise maybe mom would have stayed home or they've lost those choices, then you are going to have what looks like a less investment in the kids. But the reality is it's survival. And they have to make very hard decisions. As a mom, my kids, now that they're adults, they're starting to understand, but they would say, well, you made some bad decisions when we were growing up. There was things that we wish you hadn't have done. And I said, sometimes you were left with 2 bad choices. Yeah. And you had to make the best bad choice there was. Yeah. And that is what a lot of families, I think, are facing. They don't have a good option. They're just doing the best they can with what's being presented to them. And so, and neither one may be good choices. Yeah. And so I think that there are, of course, parents that have checked out with. I don't think that that's anything new. I think that there have been parents that have not been invested in their kids all along, but sure, we just see it in an abundance, or what seems to be that in an abundance, because of these other issues that are going on. And this goes in when we start talking about education, or start talking about the family, or start talking about all these things. There's so many things that go into that. We can even get into food. And what are we fueling our bodies with? And we're sending these kids off to school, or what have we been fueling ourselves with? And then being expected to work and have all this energy to keep up with our kids and their sports and their whatever they're involved in addition to working a job or 2 or 3. It just is not. We're not looking at the whole picture. We keep picking apart little pieces of it and band-aiding the symptoms of the issues instead of getting down to what the root causes of these issues truly are. And until we're willing, and people do finally figure it out, and they say, maybe I should take better care of my health, or maybe we should do this, or, they figure out what is the root of their own personal problems. But as a society, we have not figured out the root of the problem enough to address it and start fixing it and getting things going in the right direction. Yes.
We've been talking to Stacy Rogers. Now, you just finished up over 100 counties. You went through about over 100 counties. Of course, you're going to be starting the final run for the finish line, which is about a month away, correct? Maybe give or take.
Yes.
What are your plans for the next 30 days or so?
Yeah. So there's 105 counties in Kansas. And what I have been doing is going county to county, town to town. So when I finish, I've got 6 counties left. I will have been in every single county in the state and almost every single town in this state. I have missed a couple along the way just due to time if I ran out of daylight. So there's a few I'm actually going to try to circle back so that I can say I've been in every single town in this state, but it's been very, very important. That decision was made last fall when I went to a little town called Quinter, again in the West, and they told me that I was the first candidate for governor to be there in 18 years. Wow. And I said, that's not okay. That's just it. That should not be happening. And I made the decision then to go county to county. And then when I started thinking about it, well, a lot of them will go to the county seat. They'll go to the one town. They'll go to a special event. I said, what if I go town to town and I just start showing up where people are living their daily lives? And that's what I've done. I go to the co-op. I go to restaurants. I go to coffee shops. I go to libraries. Just anywhere, senior centers, the gas station. Yeah. And I just show up where people are congregating and talk with them as they're going about their daily lives. Yeah. And it has been very well received. I've lost count the number of times somebody has said to me, no one has ever come in here and spoken to me. I've never seen a candidate in person. And whether it could even be on the local level. Some of them have never even met their local, people. And so it is very eye-opening when you start to see how much of this state has really not been taken care of. They're forgotten. And we have dying towns in Kansas, which is very sad. Some of these towns are you can see where they were absolutely beautiful at one point. They were vibrant, and now they are a shell of what they once were. And it's very, very sad to see that as I travel. And then I see a lot of encouraging things as well. I see towns that have really banded together to take the initiative to hold on to their identity and really promote what makes them special. And I applaud those towns. And I've met individuals along the way that are, making it their personal goal to hold their towns together and create. I met a mayor of one of the towns, and he is building homes because we have a housing shortage. He is building homes in rural Kansas at just above cost to make sure that we have housing in Kansas, because we have jobs. Mm-hmm. We don't have housing. And so, we need to start taking care of our businesses as well. We have some amazing businesses across the state, small to medium businesses, and we tend to lean in favor of these large corporations that want to come in and love and leave us. And they do. They come in, they get their tax abatements, and then they leave us, and they never really love us very well. They're there for the tax abatements. And anyone that says we don't have talent in Kansas, that we don't have what it takes here, we have talent. I've seen it with my eyes. The absolute amazing people that live in this state that are underutilized, that we could be helping to get that hand up. I'm not a handout person. I am a hand up person.
Great.
To help them get going and be able to serve their communities and be beneficial. And that's a way to retain our kids as well, so that they won't leave our state and go elsewhere where they've got better opportunities.
Yeah. Great stuff here, Stacy. I really like the way you sound. I mentioned at the top of the at the top of the podcast, I'll close with this. This last question, being number two. People always sometimes a little afraid to vote for number two, but I heard you talk about that this race is actually closer than what a lot of the polls indicate.
Yeah. Because there's actually 7 of us running in the Republican primary. It's a very crowded field. Mm-hmm. But from where I started 2 years ago, and the absolute overwhelming support of people, it's very underestimated. When the people want something, it doesn't matter what the polls say. It doesn't matter how much money there is. In fact, I intend to prove that you don't need millions of dollars to run a campaign. And I think that will open the door for a lot of other servant leaders that are feeling like they can't. Mm-hmm. I actually believe it will bust a lot of myths out there and a lot of rhetoric, because it's one of the forms of control. When you tell people that they can't run because they don't have millions of dollars, it leaves a very small group of people in control. and they want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, if you're willing to work hard, you can do great things. And I've worked very hard. I've been called the hardest working candidate in this race. And I have seen the numbers, and I poll at the top, having never ran a political ad, although I do have some coming out.
Awesome.
Just so somebody doesn't call me a liar later. I do have some coming out. But the reality of it is, I've done this for the past, almost 2 years with no political ads. It's been all social media, all word of mouth, and all boots on the ground, hard work. And we need someone like that to work hard for the state. Not someone that wants to work for their own interests, but somebody that truly wants to serve the people of Kansas. And I think that I've proven that. And that's why I am getting the support that I am, because, I'm listening. I'm listening to the people. They're frustrated. They're tired, and they don't want what they've always had. In the past, you do the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. And that's the definition of insanity. And we've just done it for too long. And that's not just here in Kansas. I think that our entire country is feeling that way in a lot of these races. And I've been watching other grassroots candidates, such as myself, just absolutely wipe the floor with career politicians and establishment politicians. So I have a lot of hope in that. And it's just been very encouraging. And we're also seeing some grassroots candidates come up for our legislative positions that are true servants. And there's just a lot of encouraging things. We just need to keep that momentum up to the primary and then through to the general.
Yes. Well, Stacy, I certainly wish you the absolute best. You're going to have to keep it in. No, you got to remember us when you win.
Absolutely. I won't forget. I've been very clear on that. This has never been about me to begin with. Yeah. And it's always been for the people. And I there's no way that I could forget I'm humbled and absolutely, just gratitude filled by the love and support that I've received.
Oh, sure. I was making a joke, but it does go.
Oh, sorry.
No. You don't owe me anything. But your last episode did very well. Now that you're much higher in the polls now, let's hope for that you get that again. I will say this: you come across as what I envision American politics should be. And that's not to, put you into sainthood or anything, but I think when you talk about grassroots, this idea that a well-funded politician that looks like a used car salesman, and I always think of Gavin Newsom.
Well, we've got one of those here too.
Gavin Newsom coming in, I can just picture him with his hair slicked back, a brown suit and a toothpick in his mouth. Have I got a deal for you? And it was never meant to be that. Politics in America was never meant to be that, whether it be on the national or state level. It was never meant to be that.
No, it was always meant to be a servant position.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And I certainly get that from you. We have been talking to Stacy Rogers, candidate for the governor of Kansas. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, you can find me on any social media platform, but I am most active on Facebook and TikTok. It's usually some variation of Stacy Rogers for Kansas or Stacy Rogers for governor.
Awesome. Stacy Rogers, thank you so much for being on the program. My name is Billy Dees. I want to tell the audience you can find the Billy Dees Podcast anywhere podcasts are found. We've got over a 10-year history now, and we're very well established on all the major podcast platforms. I would say for the most part, social media, you can still find me on X. That's kind of like my social media home, which at one time was Twitter, at Billy Dees there. Thank you so much for listening to our program today. And Stacy Rogers, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And boy, I wish you nothing but the best of luck on your campaign.
Thank you. It's been a blessing to get to know you as well, Billy. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Check in with us. Follow me on X for some of the behind the scenes stuff going on with the podcast. And you can subscribe for free. There's no paywalls here. We don't do that. Our listeners are why we are here, and we don't charge. There's no hidden costs with subscribing to the Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform. Thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you again very, very soon. I'm Billy Dees and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft, advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter at Billy Dees. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.